good night. This is Julie with JFK Freedom. I want to give the Lord credit for blessing me with the rhema, not sure how to say it, and thank Him for placing the words in my mouth and appointing them this day over the nations and the kingdoms of the earth, if they so choose to listen, to uproot and break down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. I'd like to give y'all a hint of what's going to be in the video, but the rhema messages cover so many topics that I can't keep it all in my head, especially after some of the stress and depression I've gone through in the past years. I really have a hard time remembering stuff, so I'm thankful I have it all written down. But I can't. I'm no longer one of those people who can give you an overview of what I'm about to talk about. So if you're interested, then just check the description box, and even then I will probably miss a couple topics. Okay, but we're going to start with the war in Ukraine. I was surprised by this. There is someone that I listen to. They have a podcast, but I don't believe I'm at liberty to share about that. But basically, one of the men, so this is, what do you call that? Second source material. Anyway, one of the guys had interviewed one of the guys that had been at the front line. He was a foreigner who went in and then came back to this person's country, the person who did the podcast. So it was firsthand information at one point, but now it's obviously been diluted. Basically, I found this an interesting story, and I can understand it in a way because I have a father who has struggled with rage his whole life, and he still has rage, and the Lord is helping me with mine, but I can understand it. But basically, and I know that's like, it sounds terrible, but we all have things that we have to deal with. I mean, the Lord is helping me a lot, okay? A lot. So I'm not the same person I was in my memoir. But anyway, basically the basic story was that some Russian soldiers had been captured. It was more than one, so I want to say 2 at least, and I can't remember the real number. So, but it was not like 20 or 30. It wasn't anything crazy. But under the rules of war, these men should have been kept safe, but they were afraid, so they went and hid themselves in a tomb, an open tomb with a lot of dead bodies of the Ukrainian soldiers, and they were hiding there. Or, I'm not sure if it was a grave for Ukrainians or Russians. Anyway, the live Russian soldiers were hiding in the grave, and they were escorted out to the woods, and people heard the shots, and they saw, when they came back, the people's faces. I mean, they knew what had happened. And those things are not supposed to be happening. But the Lord spoke to me about that incident later, about some of the rage that these people carry against one another. And I've mentioned it before, like with World War III coming up, there will be a lot of internal fighting between, one country and the country right next to it. There's so much hatred. Sometimes we have more hatred for our so-called neighbor than we do for the enemy far away. I feel like people want to support the Ukrainians or support the Russians because they don't really know them. But how do you feel about... Yeah, I probably shouldn't get too specific. Anyway, yeah, so also the man who spoke about... Again, this was the interview with the soldier. He spoke about how terrifying it was with the drones in the sky and how difficult it was to not kill the drones, but get them out of the sky basically and dismantle them or get them out of the sky. It's just basically impossible. And this is also a concept that I've been thinking of recently, because I went to a museum in Vienna. They had a live replica of a dinosaur. They have several. And even the dodo bird, I think it was a dodo bird, they called it a terror bird. It was scary. It was over 7 feet tall, I want to say. And you just get the sense of, when I was in that room, I just got the sense of you really have to have the Lord's protection to survive an attack from this thing. And that's how I feel about these situations coming up in our lives with war and without the Lord's help, we really can't survive. And if you think about those drones circling in the sky, it's terrifying. Like, you have no chance as a human being. We have so many Hollywood movies. It's like, oh, you just gotta put your mind to it and do a lot of training and turn into a Jason Bourne and you'll survive. It's not the way reality really works, even if you are really that type of man and could take on the world. Anyways, just something I've been thinking about. So here he says, this is from the May-June notebook. I'll just mention the notebooks that they're in. So this one says that I'm basically over all the gadgety shiza by now. Drones, tech causing war to be a terror. Treacherous. They must be quaking in their boots type of thing. And it is, dear one. It is. And probably the most... Yeah, okay, I have to skip that part. And he said, conspiracy theory, not a conspiracy at all. For some people actually witnessed the event. Or actually, it says, not the event, but it said some people actually on the ground actually heard and saw what's up, Buttercup. Ukrainians and Russians alike, Hun, H-O-N, being Huns, H-U-N-S, to one another, hacking each other to shreds. If only they could get away with it, with some of the media presence lurking. Rage, hatred, can't control myself or stop this shiza from bubbling up and over onto my countenance. So anyway, very interesting to hear the Lord confirm that report was legit. This is from the May 2023 notebook. So he was talking about the Jezebel spirit, and he's been talking to me a lot about a woman who is a B word. So, and I had a friend in the past called a woman like that a piece of work. So if I say B word, we know what we're talking about. He was saying how, like, online and YouTube on the Christian community, hopefully it's going down. I don't listen to so many people anymore, but there was certainly the heyday of people talking about the Jezebel spirit. He's saying basically there's no reason for someone to be so rude and be B-word with the Y at the end. So he says, here the rhema begins, no real reason at times for that B-wordy spirit, for that's what it is, not a Jezebel spirit, as fast all many in the online community peg a sexy, pretends to be sweet woman with that intel. It must be Jezebel. No, my loves, a B word is a B word, and it's what she's had to grow up and deal with much of her life. Okay, and then he swings into my life. Anyway, I get encouraged a little bit to hear the Lord say it like it is, you know? All right, this one, again, we're still in May. He's talking about the air. Okay, so he was talking about how we might need a breath of fresh air, and here begins the rhema. Won't be fresh much longer, my lovebirds, with World War III looming. It's looming, hun, looming large in the minds of the sick satanic hordes who know what's up, Buttercup, but are they, like you, hun, working on building a condemned stash? But not at all, hun, for whatever reason. I am knows actually, dear ones, the demonic loves to see people floundering, desperate for anything, give me anything or anyone for my pleasure, and boom, they can stick it in them in error, wrong person, wrong jab. It's terrible, my love, the access the demonic has to a desperate soul. And then he swings into something personal. Okay, the next topic is how, and we're still in the May rhema, how, like, the part of the reason the Pharisees had such a problem with believing in Yeshua was something about the minutia of some of the prophecies were not exactly moving forward, or they didn't be fulfilled the way that they thought so. It is very interesting, the argument about Mary's bloodline and then Joseph's bloodline, and I believe, I can't remember if one of the Gospels actually takes Mary's bloodline, but that is like an example of how the prophecy was fulfilled, but the Pharisees may have been looking at Joseph's bloodline instead of Mary's to see if she truly, if they said that it would be her bloodline that had the Savior coming from it. So that kind of stuff is very interesting and really something that the Jewish folk are good at picking those tiny things apart. So he's talking to me about the foggy gray area of basically the Bible and these rhema messages. And I finally beginning to totally understand how there could be these super tiny errors in the Bible because, humans wrote it. And the demons worked to try to mess up the word of God. And Satan tried to wipe out David's line. I mean, there were so many things. Anyway, release some of the foggy gray areas over to me, dear one, and you'll be more successful in future watching things come to pass. For it was minutia and shiza like that threw off the Pharisees, although the prophecies were spot on. But we, meaning me and the Lord, are working together in a dark humanity hour where the demonic work to throw off these rhema messages and keep them from hitting the nail on the head. Whatever, hun, so it's scary. Do you want to stop? That's what I thought. But for tonight and for now, yes, we have reached a stopping place. Ciao, Bella. Love you, dear one, so much. Yeah, so this is just a random thing, but it's something I'm learning from the rhema is that there are two different ways to look at a person or a situation, even if what the person did may be the same as what a second person did. If person A belongs to the Lord and person B doesn't, both of them could have been doing something stupid, but when the Lord speaks to me, he's always very kind, so he will call what I did silly instead of stupid, but what he will call the same thing from another person stupid. So that is a very interesting thing and very encouraging to me because he sees the potential in those of us who belong to him. And he says that to me sometimes. He's like, whatever, so what? You were a loudmouth, or you were, you used to like to brag about your clothes. So what? It's like, and are you that way now? No. So that kind of stuff is really encouraging to me. He was also encouraging me how what I've gone through has helped me grow in a way and open other people's eyes to the humility and beauty and sensitiveness and pain that can roll into a woman's life just through being scorned wrongfully and not being treated with much care. So there are things like that. I was really embarrassed to give my testimony to someone in the church. And then the Lord encouraged me, like, because of the testimony, because this man, he's kind of important because he would decide if I become a member of the church. So I was answering all his questions. But in general, I'm not talking to anyone in real life about my marriage anymore. But I did to him. And at the end of that talk, oh my gosh, I just felt like a bug. I mean, there's that verse, Jesus calls himself, he says, I'm a worm and no man. I really feel that way at times. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so depressed. And here I am surrounded by some of these people from this church, and I gotta keep doing the social thing for a few hours, and I just wanted to disappear. And the Lord just encouraging me through that situation, like, you opened his eyes to what can happen to a woman if she's not treated with respect. And the Lord revealed to me his marriage is not that great, and he has been tempted to shut his wife down and make her be more quiet, but he doesn't. And the Lord honors him for that, for honoring his silly wife. And the Lord describes her as silly because, she belongs to the Lord too, but just because we belong to the Lord doesn't mean we don't. If you don't go through some hard lessons, sometimes you do end up having these silly tendencies, although you can still certainly belong to the Lord, which would have described me in past times. The Lord's kind of whacking the silly out of me. But anyway, that was really encouraging to me. And this is just random. It's from that same rhema. The Lord was encouraging me. I was really upset about something, but I had to hide it from my so-called husband because he despises me when I'm crying. So I had my moment. I was angry about something very specific. I had to pay for something I didn't want to pay for. It was unfair. It was absolutely unfair. And I cried out of rage and frustration. And then the Lord reminded me that that I'm not quite alone, and that the angels were certainly rooting for me that night. Rooting for me all the condemned time, he said. And he said they were angry on my behalf. So that was really cool to hear. And I had my moment, and then I had to calm down and just talk very calmly to Felix about what happened, because he had to know it, because I had to pay extra money for what happened. This will pop up in the next rhema in the next video, but also I'll talk about how the Lord flips things on the head for us in many ways. So it's like Paul in the dungeon and he's praising the Lord. I mean, how many of us really can pull off something like that? But in real life, it doesn't turn out quite the same, but life can certainly feel very unfair at times. The Lord speaks to us. We have some unfair situations coming up with trying to stick in our arm or hand, whatever it's going to be. There are some people running around Vienna now with some chips for paying, so it's happening here now. And of course, they make it look super cool. There's a guy, he's got like 3 rice-sized things, little chips in his hand, and he can pay, and he can, I think, get into his work or something, and then there's something else. There's some reason he has 3 chips and not just 1. They showed him on the news with this sore, and seriously, like, I don't mind seeing a sore, but it just made me want to gag. Like, I wanted to barf seeing the redness of the wound where he got it. I was like, ugh. Anyway. Apologies, the audio is different. I'm on my headset now. I didn't really finish this thought out, but basically the next rhema will talk about how things get flipped on their heads. So other people may be receiving something in their hands so that they can go buy food, and it may seem like they're on top, but the Lord doesn't view it that way, that we're losers. He never views us as losers. So that's kind of the concept, the flip things on the head concept, that from one view it looks like this, but from another view, from a spiritual perspective, it's like that. Next rhema, we'll be talking about some of the guys. The Lord will specifically talk to some of you about what he will be giving and blessing you with in the 1,000-year reign. So, and ladies too. So some of you ladies will be blessed with the right man in the 1,000-year reign as well. So that's pretty cool. But as the Lord said, the children that are meant to be born, for anyone not growing up, basically not a child at this time, for those of us who are adults, this is the time to be having children if the Lord lays that on your heart. So there's a really wonderful book called Start Your Family. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. And basically, there are so many reasons to not have kids, and it gives you like validation, and then it's like, okay, but what does God's word say? How can we have faith through this situation? It's a sick world. We don't have enough money. All this stuff. We don't have our career established. And then it encourages you that wealth, that'll be in the next rhema too. True wealth includes having children. But if you don't have any, I'm not saying you're not wealthy in the spiritual realm, but that is one of the blessings, highly, highly valued, obviously, in the Old Testament at that time, Israeli culture, so Hebrew culture. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed these excerpts and wish you all the best. Remember, if you devote your heart to him and stretch out your hands to him, if you put away the sin that is in your hand and allow no evil to dwell in your tent, then you will lift up your face without shame. You will stand firm and without fear. You will surely forget your trouble as water under the bridge. Life will be brighter than the noonday, and darkness will become like morning. You will be secure because there is hope. You will look about you and take rest in Selah. You will be secure because there is hope. You will look about you and take your rest in safety. You will lie down with no one to make you afraid, and many will court your favor. God bless. Unicorn. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.